This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
You are what you watch.
Hello, my name is Tambuatco. Welcome to our program. As in what I keep saying week after week, there is a need to understand, to comprehend, to question if need be, the concept of federalism. Why? Well, all these issues, investigations and all these scandals, even drugs to a certain extent, will fade away once these criminals are caught, and it can't be that they just keep on going, pushing their wares. Federalism, on the other hand, will go down to our children or grandchildren. It will spell the difference between prosperity, peace, and more prosperity. The problem is we are not discussing it, most especially media. I fault media for not wanting to talk about it, introduce it, educate, to bring it up, to bring up the voice of the people if need be. This is what you and I have to start talking about on a daily basis, whether you're having cocktails or you're having dinner, even with your family. Learn, know about it, simply because this is what is going to happen eventually. Or we scrap the whole thing and go back to what doesn't work since the birth of the Republic, which is exactly the system we have today. You make that choice. Today we're going to talk about federal fiscal autonomy. Ano po ibig sabihin yan? Ano yung mga proposal pagdating sa mga economic, paano tayo gagawa, paano tayo aandar? Alam na natin, you have the executive, you have the legislative. Wala nang Senado, papalitan na yan. Kaya tawag po dyan parliamentary. Tsaka yung judiciary, mga husgado, Supreme Court, etc. Last week, we discussed that. We'll discuss next week the concept, the discipline of the judiciary. Interestingly enough, the IBP, Integrated Bar of the Philippines, is going to be doing this talk, these conversations with all the different prosecutors and lawyers. In the morning of next week, we will be doing a show on the very same topic. But in this show, we're going to do federal fiscal autonomy. Paano mo gagalaw ang pera, taxation, etc. With us, of course, we have the spokesperson of the MRRD. That's the Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte and the NECC. And we're talking of PENAM-FED. This is the proposal of the government for a federal republic. We have the spokesperson, we have Bobby Briliante with us. He's been with us in the last 4 or 5 shows. He represents them as well as the spokesperson. And today we also have from a USEC, again from the Department of Interior and Local Government, we have John Castriciones.
Yes.
John, thank you very much for being here. Bobby, salamat.
Yeah.
At least hindi ka, you're not tiring to come and keep discussing the issues.
Thank you once again.
John, I came up with 4 different slides very quickly. Let's go through it one after the other. Andy, can we put on the first slide? That's the federal parliamentary, the Philippine model. I'll just read very quickly. The executive branch of government is somehow fused with the legislative branch of government to have unity and of purpose. Why? Because the Prime Minister who exercises executive power is a member of the Parliament, and majority of the cabinet members will be chosen from the very same Parliament. The legislature is unicameral. There are no longer upper and lower houses of Congress. It is simply called Parliament, one and only legislative body of the federal government. And finally, the members of the Parliament are focused on legislative work, although some of its members who may be appointed members of the cabinet exercise executive duties and functions. Now, let's talk about that very quickly. What it means is wala na tayong Senado. So at least wala na yung babalik-balik. Would you like to add to this federal parliamentary, the Philippine model, on these three phrases, John?
Sure, Harry. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you for your remarks. Most especially when it comes from a media personality like you, then probably that's something to think about, to ponder about.
Maraming salamat po.
Okay.
But this is what is important. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are right.
I'm
Absolutely
not
right.
an entertainer, di ba?
You're absolutely right. That's why I really think that you're hitting the head.
Maraming
of the
salamat
nail. Thank
po.
you. Anyway, let me just make a remark about
Yes.
what you have just read. And of course, the emphasis on what you have read is on the concept of a parliamentary system. Parliamentary system wherein, of course, there's a fusion between the legislature and the executive, as you have said, and that will make things a lot easier for purposes of implementation, lawmaking, and for the execution of laws. But of course, when you inject a federal parliamentary system, then it's a bit complicated because you are fusing two kinds of a system of government that will really have to be more effective based on the needs of the people, based on the culture of the people, based on what is demanded and what is actually more effective for the
So
people.
you reduce the conflict, the crisis between Congress and the executive.
That is very true. That is very true. And when you talk about federalism, just like the United States is a federal system of government, and yet they are presidential.
Maybe let's leave America out because
Okay.
Trumpism, being Trump, let's even leave Europe out because they're having their own crisis. But let's go forward.
Okay. Anyway, just so that we would be able to really concentrate on the topic about federal parliamentarism, I think this is the most effective system that we have to adopt. Of course, there are a lot of other suggestions on the kind of government that we should adopt, but for the Philippines, we have seen a lot of models of other countries which have adopted the federal parliamentary system, and they have the same situation when it comes to culture, a diverse culture such as what we have. Can you imagine? We are composed of 7,201 islands, and we have so many dialects here, subcultures, etc., etc. And federal parliamentary system, I think, is the most effective way so that we will be able to respect the culture of each of our peoples where they belong.
A more effective voice.
That's true. And at the same time, when we say parliamentary, there would be a strong approach when it comes to the so-called implementation of laws and also the preparation of laws through the legislature.
You, Bobby, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, again, the spirit of federalism is really sharing of powers among the would-be leaders in the entire territory. I believe from the very beginning that federal system for the Philippines is just perfect, considering that our situation, we are an archipelagic country. So it would be hard to govern if you do not trust your local leaders and if you do not empower them with some political and financial powers in order to determine their own directions, especially the economic development of their local areas.
Gentlemen, I agree with you. I like to even make it simpler. The system we have since the birth of the Republic obviously has failed the people because of increased poverty. The poverty has only magnified itself since President Quezon all the way up today. So obviously it has failed the people. So obviously this is an option we have to think about very clearly, very seriously, because the current system does not work. All this infighting we see where media goes and you see all the different actors called the senators and even congressmen and even mayors to a certain extent. I mean, it's a teleserye that's ongoing. I mean, soon the major TV networks will no longer need actors. We have them called people in government. But going further, Andy, can we go to the next slide, please? The federal government attends to the social and economic development of the entire Filipino people as a nation. The Philippines is divided into several regional political units called states. Each state is empowered to become self-sufficient, self-reliant, and autonomous. There is a transfer of substantive powers of the national government. Each state government collects the national taxes, fees, and other charges, and automatically retains its share. This becomes interesting. John,
Yes.
your points to add to remarks first before we discuss the issue.
Well, actually, this is a development that I think is most welcome, if not the more appropriate thing to do when it comes to the devolution of power. Because for the longest time, as you have said, we have been used into this unitary system, and yet we have not been so effective.
It's failed us.
It failed
You're
us.
nicer. You say not effective. I say failed us, but go ahead.
Well, actually, let us try to focus, for example, a case in point. We have 24 senators, right? And each of them is given a budget where they can, well, of course, allocate it for their concerns.
200 million to be exact.
Well, you're,
Wow, ang laki, no?
that's why. A year that.
A year, ay na.
And, you know.
Why do you think they don't, well, yeah, bagay, mas malaki mayor pag Manila, Makati, Quezon City. Billion yun eh.
Yes.
Ito, magkano na to? 1.2 billion in 6 years. Ang mayor, 3 billion pagdating sa 27%, di ba? Retained, but go ahead.
Well, that's just an example. You see, well, our senators, their lifeline, of course, are the votes of the people. And so they're more concerned about areas which have a big density of people in population. And most likely, this would be the urban centers.
Siyempre.
And so most of the projects are actually focused on the so-called urban centers. What about the far-flung areas, the rural areas?
Wala na.
So that's the problem there. So they don't give so much emphasis on projects in different areas. What I'm not saying it's the general practice of most senators. No, there are those senators who have the conscience of really trying to deliver the so-called the projects.
Wait, naninibago ako doon. Did you say conscience? But go ahead. Nahihirapan ako doon, but go ahead.
Okay, anyway, to cut the story short, what I'm trying to say is that with that kind of system or setup, the development is only focused on urban areas and not on the peripheries. So
This is what we've seen.
Yes, and that's the problem. In a federal parliamentary system of government, there would be some sort of an equality. There would be an opportunity for all the different states. So for that matter, all regions will have the capacity to develop, like their sisters, their urban cities, urban areas, etc., etc.
Bobby, anything, a remark, addition to that before we go on a free wheel on that?
Actually, going federal is just like going back to our history. Remember that before the coming of the Spaniards, we had village democracies, and each and every community have their own councils. They discuss political disputes, even individual quarrels, social issues, and economic development of each and every village. So by going federal, we're just enlarging that concept of governance by having an umbrella government over the local governments, which is the federal government.
I agree with that. John, I have issues. We have 81 provinces.
Yes.
We are looking at assuming that we will translate the regions that we have, the 17 regions, or 18 if Negros is NAR. Let's say 17 first. So kung gawin natin states yan, paano isa-subdivide yung mga probinsya? You have 81, so we divide 81 into 17. So for example, Region 1 will have, kumbaga may governor dyan, you're talking 4 or 5 governors sa isang lugar.
Yes.
Correct me? That's the system.
That's correct.
How do we unify 4 different local presidents calling themselves governors? Because here, wag mo babangga yung teritoryo ko, akin itong La Union. Yun, nandiyan si Chavit Singson. Mga anak niya, tsaka mga kamag-anak niya, ang tagal na dyan. Eh, mga D, dyan sa Isabela, sa kabila. Eh, paano naman ang Marcos, di ba? Nasa Pariños, mga Ilocano. These are strong men, well, which are composed of dynasties and who today are oligarchs, di ba? And they have economic powers. Their prowess because they own the local hardware, they employ the most number of people, they have the largest pieces of land. I mean, sure, they respect the national government, but sila ang kingpin dyan. Paano may didikit yung 4 na 5 na napakalaki ng ulo in a smaller box?
Well, there would be a state government, which of course is in full control of the whole region. And
So one kingpin.
well, not actually one kingpin, but it's more of a body. That is what is good about a federal system of government, wherein we have a state government, wherein, of course, as you said, since it's a federal parliamentary, the parliamentarians, because each state has its own sets of lawmakers, and so they would be the ones who would be in charge of their state, and because of that,
No, but it's not the legislative, it's the executive who implements.
that is why.
How do you fuse these strong powers together?
Well, of course, we have the model here, which is the federal government, which is the national government. Most likely, it would be the same as that in the state.
Correct.
In the state.
But we have one president, the federal government, and the vice president,
and also the prime minister.
the prime minister,
Yes, yes.
who runs government.
Correct, correct. So in the same manner, the setup or the arrangement amongst the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive would be something
Localized.
localized or the same as that of the federal government. So there would be no one power that would be lording it over, so to speak, in one state. So it would be some sort of a committee, a body that will have to oversee everything, and that will have to protect the welfare of the people. And at the same time, with regards to your concept of provinces, because a while back before
81, yeah.
the show started, you were of the opinion that you wanted these governors abolished, right?
There is no need for them. After parliamentary, we go down to the local representatives, that's the legislative, and then the city mayors that operate.
That's what I'm saying as the Harry School of Thought.
Okay.
Anyway, Harry, well, that's a proposal, actually, and nothing is final as yet. Everything is still being planned, and everything is not permanent. It's fluid.
It's very fluid.
It's temporary, and what we're going to do is we are going to focus on matters that are more relevant at this point in time. And probably...
Not Dilima, huh? That's not relevant. She's going to jail.
Oh, are you
That's
sure?
that. Oh, we pray. The whole country is praying. Not without the priests and madres, but we're praying. There's more of us, but go ahead.
I'll join you in your prayers.
Yes.
Okay, anyway.
Thank you.
What I'm trying to say, Harry, is that the system or the setup generally is that we will be creating a miniature setup from the federal government. And in each state, your worries about some politicians, local politicians, lording it over would not be possible, because there is a very specific system of checks and balances in a federal parliamentary system. And that is for sure.
So it's the local the local parliamentarians that will check the oligarchs as they come along. Okay, we're going to have to take a short break. Alam mo, Jan, Bobby, alam mo, every time we discuss federalism, it seems to me every week the show gets shorter and shorter. And yet every time I look at the clock and the broadcast clock, pareho naman ang oras, pero bakit we're only there 5 minutes? Sir, 22 minutes na kayo nagsasalita dyan. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to take a short break. A station ID will be right back, and we'll discuss the 2 other issues equally important, the sharing of taxes. Saan pupunta ang pondo? We'll be right back.